Hello, my name is Michael King, and in today's episode we're going to be looking at making the soundboard. We already have our body, which has been pre-routed, all the holes drilled, and everything is ready for the soundboard to be glued on. Now, the soundboard I supply in my kits is quarter saw maple, and basically it's 4mm approximately sawn. So what we need to do is to sand flush one of the faces, and then we're going to attach that to a board. Okay, so we have our soundboard. We've decided that we're using this as our front, we're going to use this as our back. So we alternate the direction so that we're flattening the whole board. And once you've done this with the 120 grit, then I'd recommend you move on to the 180. You don't need to go to the 220 yet. I would leave it probably 180 for now, while we're still working on it. Okay, so we've pretty much got our top sanded down now. We're just going to, I'm using a Stanley blade as a quick scraper, just to get any more dust off the top so that it sticks better to the tape. This part will be the inside of the soundboard, so just want to get it cleaned up. Now we're going to take double-sided carpet tape . Now the reason I've used this method is that it enables us to tape the wood to another board which can then be clamped. Instead of having to clamp this board, it just means we can plane the whole surface a lot easier, and it doesn't require any expense really. It's a very cheap way of doing it. The board we're going to stick this to is a piece of Conti board which has Formica attached to it, or melamine attached to it. This enables you to get the adhesive off quite easily once you finish planing and reuse the board. So this we just apply. Now we look. Okay. And the clamps we're going to use today are just these wolf clamps. With the Lyre soundboard, what we're going to try and do is to keep this area here as thick as we can. Ideally, we're going to try and get 3.5–4mm, aim for that about here. This is going to be our high point, and from this position here, we're going to gradually plane down so that the edges, we'll aim for 3mm, and about 2.5 over here. And that will allow for final sanding once we've glued it to the lyre body. So we're going to plane off the sides first and gradually work towards the middle. Now there is an alternative. Now some people are quite adept at using this tool here, the orbital sander. There is such a danger of over sanding because you're dealing with such thin wood. I would recommend that you start off planing, or maybe using a rough piece of sandpaper rather than going straight with this tool, because this tool will take off wood that you can't put back. With the hand plane you can control the cut by making it very shallow so that you're only taking off a little bit at a time. Also the wood is easier to clean up and has more luster if you use a hand plane and scrapers rather than the sanding route. If you just use a sander, then the wood is going to have quite a dull finish. Which might look and sound fine, but it's really what you want to do, and it's however you want to take on it. If you want to take a couple of hours to do this piece of wood, then you can do it by sanding. If you want to do it in half an hour, a plane will do this. And again, I don't think the sander is actually that much quicker. It's just, if you're used to using this sort of tool, then why not do it? but as I say, just take care. The grain on this wood is quite figured, and so at some stage some sanding might be necessary, but give it a go with the plane, and good luck. You can see how much better the shavings are once it's been sharpened. But bear in mind, keep checking the edges, make sure that you don't go too far. And we're going to rotate the board. Now sometimes with the grain it doesn't always work, and you have to find other ways of planing the other side. Nice light passes there. Now the wood is still quite thick here. What we want to do is for the wood to get thinner and thinner as we get closer to the arms, with most of the thickness here, so around about 3 millimeters here, going to 2.5 millimeters here, down to about 2.5 here, and gradually to 2 millimeters. But I would leave it at 2.5 millimeters until after you glue up, so that you have some extra to spare. The cabinet scraper is better, but this comes very sharpened. Or you can use sandpaper and do it by hand, or as I said before, if you're very careful, I would use 180 grit and take it down very carefully, very careful around the edge. It's so easy just to go right through this. It's such a thin piece of wood. Okay, now we've finished sanding our lyre at the top. Now just one word about removing. Use a knife or some other thin bladed object, maybe a butter knife would be better. Gradually go around the outside. Now remember, at this stage it's quite vulnerable because it's not attached to the body. And take your time, there's no rush getting this off. I'm quite lucky because I'm outside in the cold, and so the adhesive is coming off quite easily. But sometimes it can be quite tricky. Just take it easy with, especially don't try and force it. Okay, there we go. Now we just peel this off. Now you'll find you will get residue, but if you roll this up into a ball, you should be able to take off most of it. And any other residue you should be able to clean up with a scraper. Okay, so there we go. The next stage is gluing up.